I should have noticed when she started dressing differently. When the late nights at the salon became a pattern. When she stopped looking me in the eye. But I was too busy being the good husband, the provider, the fool. Then I came home early one Tuesday and heard her voice upstairs. That laugh. That tone. And I realized my entire marriage was a lie. What I did next. She never saw it coming. My name is Michael Hansen. I'm 56 years old, and I've spent the last 23 years building what I thought was a solid life. Good career as a senior data analyst at a fintech company, 2 kids who made me proud, a wife who ran her own business. From the outside, we looked like we had it all figured out. From the inside, well, that's a different story. It started on a Tuesday evening. I came home early, something I rarely did. My manager had sent me home after I wrapped up a major project ahead of schedule. The house was quiet when I walked in, which struck me as odd since Margot's car sat in the driveway. I set my laptop bag down in the entryway and headed toward the kitchen. That's when I heard it. Her voice, low and intimate, drifting from the home office upstairs. She was laughing, the kind of laugh she used to reserve for me in our early years. "Troy, stop it," she said, her voice playful. "He'll be home in a few hours. I can't talk long." I froze at the bottom of the stairs. Troy. The name meant nothing to me, but the tone meant everything. I know, she continued. "Last night was incredible. When can we do it again?" My chest tightened, but I didn't move. I just stood there, listening to my wife plan her next rendezvous with another man in the house I've been paying the mortgage on for 18 years. "The salon's doing great," Margot said. "He has no idea how much I'm actually making. I've been moving money into the business account, and he never checks. Too busy with his spreadsheets and data models to notice what's happening right under his nose." Something cold settled in my gut. Not anger, not yet. Just a crystallizing clarity that changes everything when you finally see the truth. She laughed again. "Troy, you're terrible. But you're right. When this is all over, we'll have more than enough to start fresh. Somewhere warm. Maybe Arizona, like we talked about." I backed away from the stairs slowly, carefully, until I reached the front door. I picked up my laptop bag, stepped outside, and closed the door with a soft click. For the next hour, I sat in my car, 2 blocks away, hands on the steering wheel, breathing steadily. I wasn't falling apart. I wasn't planning some dramatic confrontation. I was thinking, calculating, planning. See, being a data analyst teaches you something valuable. Patterns reveal themselves if you're patient enough to look. And right now, I needed to see the full picture before making any moves. When I finally drove back home, I made sure my arrival was loud. Car door slam, keys jangling, heavy footsteps. By the time I walked through the front door, Margot was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner like nothing had happened. "Hey, honey," she said without looking up. "You're home early." I set my bag down. Finished the Signal project ahead of schedule. That's great. Still not looking at me. Dinner will be ready in 30. I watched her for a moment. She looked the same as always. Blonde hair pulled back, yoga pants, one of those expensive athleisure tops she'd been buying lately. Nothing about her screamed guilty. Nothing about her looked like a woman planning to take half of everything I'd built and run off with someone named Troy. But I knew better now. "I'll be in my office," I said. She nodded absently, and I headed upstairs. In my office, the same one where she'd been plotting my financial ruin an hour ago, I sat down at my computer and opened a secure browser. My fingers moved across the keyboard with purpose. First search, divorce attorneys specializing in asset protection. Second search, private investigators in the area. Third search, property records for our house. I pulled up the quitclaim deed from 2012. The one Margot had signed when we refinanced during the recession. She'd been annoyed at all the paperwork, told me to handle it. She'd signed where I pointed, never reading the fine print. The house was solely in my name. Had been for 11 years. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the screen. She thought she was playing me. Thought I was too absorbed in my work to notice her schemes. She was wrong. I spent the next 3 weeks being the perfect husband. Attentive but not suspicious. Present but not intrusive. I asked about her day at the salon, complimented her new outfits, even suggested we take a weekend trip to the mountains. Margot seemed relieved by my renewed interest. She probably thought whatever distance had grown between us was finally closing. She had no idea I was documenting everything. Every morning after she left for the salon, I'd spend 30 minutes in my home office going through our financial records. Not just the joint checking account she thought I never looked at, but everything. Credit card statements, business filings, tax returns from the past 5 years. The picture that emerged was damning. Her salon, Margot's Luxe Beauty, showed modest profits on paper, about $40,000 a year after expenses. But when I cross-referenced the business bank statements with her reported income, something didn't add up. Cash deposits. Lots of them. Small amounts. Always under $10,000 to avoid automatic reporting requirements. Over the past 2 years, she deposited nearly $90,000 in cash that never appeared on any tax document. I created a spreadsheet. Dates, amounts, patterns. The deposits always came on Tuesdays and Fridays, the days she claimed were her busiest. Then I found something else. Wire transfers to an LLC called Desert Bloom Properties in Arizona. $15,000 in October. $20,000 in January. Another $18,000 just last month. I ran a corporate search. Desert Bloom Properties had 2 listed owners, Troy Kessler and Margot Hansen. There was my wife and her boyfriend buying property together with money she'd hidden from me. That night at dinner, I watched her across the table. Our daughter Aurora was talking about some drama at school, and Margot was nodding along, smiling, playing the engaged mother. "Mom, are you even listening?" Aurora asked. Margot blinked. "Of course, sweetie. You were saying something about Emily and the science project." Aurora rolled her eyes. "That was 5 minutes ago." Jack, our 18-year-old, caught my eye. There was something in his expression, a tightness around his mouth that I'd noticed more often lately. After dinner, I found him in his room, supposedly doing homework, but mostly staring at his laptop screen. I knocked on the doorframe. "Got a minute?" He looked up, and for a moment, I saw something like relief flash across his face. "Yeah, come in." I closed the door behind me and sat on the edge of his bed. "You okay? You seem distracted lately." Jack set his laptop aside. His hands were shaking slightly. "Dad, I need to tell you something, and I don't know how to say it." My chest tightened, but I kept my voice steady. "Whatever it is, just tell me straight." He took a deep breath. "About 6 months ago, I was using Mom's laptop to print something for school. Mine was out of ink, and I saw her messages pop up on the screen. I waited. She was texting someone named Troy." Jack continued, his voice cracking slightly. "The messages were, 'Dad, they were just friendly.' She was saying things about meeting him at hotels, about being careful so you wouldn't find out." The room felt smaller suddenly. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't know what to do," he said, and now there were tears in his eyes. "I wanted to tell you, but I kept thinking maybe I misunderstood. Maybe there was some explanation. And then I felt guilty for not saying anything, and the longer I waited, the harder it got." I moved to sit beside him and put my hand on his shoulder. "Jack, look at me." He did, wiping his eyes. "This is not your responsibility," I said firmly. "This is between your mother and me. You did nothing wrong by being confused or scared. Do you understand?" He nodded, but the guilt was still written all over his face. "I need you to trust me on something," I continued. "I already know about Troy. I'm known for a few weeks now, and I'm handling it." Jack's eyes widened. "You know? What are you going to do?" I stood up. "What needs to be done? But I need you to do something for me. Can you do that? Anything. Don't tell your mother we had this conversation. Act normal. Can you do that?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah, I can do that." As I left his room, something shifted inside me. This wasn't just about me anymore. Margot's betrayal had wounded our son too, made him carry a burden he should never have had carry. She was going to pay for that. 3 days after my conversation with Jack, I made an appointment at a private medical clinic 40 miles outside town. The kind of place that doesn't ask questions and processes results quickly for the right price. I told Margot I had a dental appointment. She barely looked up from her phone. The clinic was sterile and efficient. A nurse took samples from me, and I provided the items I collected from home. Aurora's hairbrush, carefully sealed in a plastic bag. Results in 5 business days, the receptionist said, handing me a receipt. "We'll call the number you provided." I drove back home with my hand steady on the wheel, but my mind was racing. Part of me hoped I was wrong, that this was just paranoia, a cruel suspicion born from betrayal. But the timeline kept nagging at me. Aurora was 14. Margot's affair with Troy had started at least 6 months ago, according to Jack. But how long had it really been going on? And were there others before Troy? That evening, I sat in my office reviewing old photographs on my computer. Aurora as a baby. Her first birthday. Her kindergarten graduation. I studied her face, looking for traces of myself. She had Margot's blonde hair, but her eyes, her nose, even the way she smiled, those had always seemed different somehow. I'd convinced myself over the years that she just took after Margot's side of the family. But now, looking at these photos with new clarity, I saw what I'd been avoiding for 14 years. The call came on a Thursday afternoon while I was at work. I stepped out of a meeting and took it in my car. "Mr. Hansen," the clinic director said, "your results are ready. Would you like me to email them, or would you prefer to discuss them over the phone?" "Just tell me." There was a pause. "The probability of paternity is 0%. You are not the biological father of the child in question." The world didn't stop. The parking lot didn't blur. I just sat there, phone pressed to my ear, feeling something cold and final settle into place. "Mr. Hansen, are you still there?" "Yes," I said. "Email me the full report. I'll need certified copies for legal purposes." "Of course. I'm very sorry." I hung up and sat in my car for 20 minutes. Not crying, not raging, just processing the data like I would any other analysis at work. Aurora wasn't mine. Margot had been lying to me for 14 years. Every birthday party, every school play, every father-daughter dance, it had all been built on a foundation of deception. But here's what surprised me. I still loved Aurora. That hadn't changed. Biology didn't erase the fact that I'd raised her, taught her to ride a bike, helped her with homework, sat up with her when she was sick. Margot had taken many things from me. She wasn't taking my daughter. That night, I printed out the DNA results and locked them in my office safe, along with the financial documents I'd been collecting. Then I went downstairs and found Aurora doing homework at the kitchen table. "Hey, Dad," she said without looking up. "Can you help me with this algebra problem?" I sat down beside her. "Show me what you've got." We worked through the problem together, and when she finally got the answer, she grinned at me with pure joy. That smile was real. Whatever else was false in this house, that smile was true. After she went to bed, I opened my laptop and drafted an email to 3 law firms that specialized in complex divorce cases. I attached a summary of everything I'd found: the hidden income, the Arizona property, the financial fraud. And I attached the DNA results. By midnight, I'd received responses from all 3 firms. They all wanted to meet. Monday morning, I took a personal day from work. Margot left for the salon at 9, and by 9:30, I was sitting in the offices of Sterling and Blackwell LLP on the 42nd floor of a downtown high-rise. The receptionist led me through a hallway lined with mahogany and brass to a conference room overlooking the city. Mr. Hansen, a tall man in his late 50s, entered and extended his hand. "I'm Richard Sterling, senior partner. Thank you for coming in." Behind him came 2 others, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s and a younger man carrying a thick folder. "This is Patricia Gaines, our lead family law litigator, and Thomas Wu, our forensic accountant." We sat down, and I laid out everything. I spoke for 40 minutes without interruption, walking them through the timeline, the evidence, the DNA results. When I finished, Richard leaned back in his chair. "Mr. Hansen, I'm going to be direct with you. What your wife has done isn't just marital betrayal. It's fraud on multiple levels. The hidden income, the property purchases, the paternity deception, any one of these would be significant. Together, they paint a picture of calculated, long-term deception." Patricia nodded. "The DNA situation complicates things emotionally, but legally, it strengthens your position considerably. You've been defrauded into supporting a child that isn't biologically yours." "I still want custody of Aurora," I said firmly. "Or at least joint custody. I've raised her. I'm her father in every way that matters." "That's admirable," Patricia said, "and we can argue that. But you need to understand, once this DNA evidence comes out in court, it's going to be explosive." Thomas opened his folder. "I've reviewed the financial documents you sent. Your wife has underreported approximately $130,000 in income over the past 3 years. That's tax fraud. And the property purchases in Arizona, those were made using funds that should have been marital assets. She's been systematically hiding wealth." "What's our strategy?" I asked. Richard folded his hands. "We hit her from multiple angles simultaneously. We file for divorce with a motion to freeze all assets pending investigation. We demand full disclosure of all bank accounts, business records, property holdings. We depose her business partner, this Troy Kessler, and we make it clear that if she doesn't cooperate fully, we're prepared to report the tax fraud to the IRS. How long will this take? If she fights, 6 months to a year. If she's smart and settles, we could be done in 90 days. Patricia added, but Michael, I need you to be prepared. This is going to get ugly. She's going to feel cornered, and corner people do desperate things. You need to be ready for her to attack you, to try to turn the kids against you, to make accusations. I'm ready, I said. I've been preparing for this longer than she knows. Richard smiled slightly. Then let's get started. Over the next 2 hours, we went through every detail. They drafted a retainer agreement, discussed fees, outlined the timeline. By the time I left the office, I had a team of 3 attorneys working for me and a battle plan that would dismantle everything Margot had built. I drove home slowly, taking the long route through the city. The sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the buildings. When I pulled into the driveway, Margot's car was already there. I sat in my car for a moment, looking at the house. From the outside, it looked peaceful, the kind of place where happy families lived. Inside was a different story. I walked in and found Margot in the living room, wine glass in hand, scrolling through her phone. Hey, she said without looking up. How was work? Fine, I replied. Long day. Home. Still scrolling. I stood there for a moment, watching her. She had no idea what was coming. No idea that in 72 hours, her entire world would collapse. I'm going to take a shower, I said. Okay. As I walked upstairs, I thought about all the years we'd spent together. The good times before things fell apart. The promises we'd made. She'd broken every single one of them. But I hadn't. And that was going to make all the difference. 2 weeks before filing for divorce, I got a call from Patricia Gaines at Sterling and Blackwell. Michael, we have a development, she said. Margot's accountant wants to talk to us. I was sitting in my car during lunch break. Her accountant? What? He says he's concerned about potential legal exposure. Apparently, your wife has been pushing him to hide income and create false deductions. He's worried about losing his CPA license. When can we meet him? Tomorrow afternoon. Can you make it? The next day, I sat in a conference room with Patricia and Thomas Wu, facing a nervous man in his early 40s named Gerald Simmons. He had a folder in front of him, and his hands wouldn't stop moving. Mr. Hanson, Gerald began, I want to start by saying I never intended for things to go this far. When Mrs. Hanson first asked me to, let's say, optimize her tax situation, I thought it was standard business planning. Patricia leaned forward. When did it become more than standard planning? Gerald opened his folder. About 2 years ago, she started insisting I underreport cash income from the salon. At first, it was small amounts, a few thousand here and there. But then it escalated. She was depositing large sums of cash and demanding I keep it off the books entirely. How much are we talking about? Thomas asked. Over the past 2 years, approximately $93,000 in unreported income. Gerald slid a spreadsheet across the table. I documented everything. Dates, amounts, even email exchanges where she explicitly told me to hide the money. I looked at the spreadsheet. It was damning. Every transaction meticulously recorded. Why are you coming forward now? I asked. Gerald met my eyes. Because last month, she asked me to do something I couldn't do. She wanted me to create a false business expense report showing she'd paid $70,000 to a consulting firm that doesn't exist. The money was actually going to Desert Bloom Properties in Arizona. When I pushed back, she threatened to report me to the state board for malpractice if I didn't comply. So she tried to blackmail you, Patricia said. Yes. And that's when I realized this wasn't just aggressive tax planning anymore. This was fraud, and she was trying to drag me down with her. Thomas took the spreadsheet. Mr. Simmons, would you be willing to provide testimony in divorce proceedings? Yes. And I'll provide everything to the IRS if needed. I want to cooperate fully to minimize my own exposure. After Gerald left, Patricia turned to me. This is huge. With his testimony and documentation, we can prove systematic fraud. The judge is going to eviscerate her. What about Desert Bloom Properties? Can we go after that? Absolutely. If she used marital funds to purchase property with another man, We can force the sale and recover your portion, plus damages. I drove home that afternoon, feeling something close to satisfaction. Every piece was falling into place. The financial fraud, the property scheme, the DNA results, it all built a picture of someone who'd been systematically betraying me for years. That night, Margot was in an unusually good mood. She'd made dinner and was laughing with Aurora about something that happened at school. "Dad, Mom says we can go to Disney World this summer," Aurora said excitedly. I looked at Margot. "Disney World?" She smiled. "I thought it would be nice. We haven't taken a family vacation in 2 years." "That sounds expensive." "The salon's doing really well," she said smoothly. "We can afford it." I nodded slowly. "Sure, let's plan on it." Aurora cheered and hugged her mother. I watched them, thinking about the spreadsheet in Gerald's folder. The $93,000 Margot had hidden. The vacation she was planning to take with money she'd stolen. In 2 weeks, she'd be served with divorce papers. In 3 weeks, her bank accounts would be frozen. Disney World wasn't happening. But I let Aurora have her moment of excitement. She'd been through enough already, even if she didn't know it yet. Later that night, after everyone was asleep, I received an email from Patricia. The subject line read, "Draft filing ready for review." I opened the attachment. 47 pages of legal documentation. Petition for divorce. Motion to freeze assets. Motion for full financial discovery. Subpoena for business records. Witness list. At the bottom of the witness list, Gerald Simmons, CPA. I read through every page, making notes, checking facts. Everything was accurate. Everything was devastating. I sent Patricia my approval and closed my laptop. In 72 hours, Margot's world would start collapsing, and she had no idea it was coming. Friday afternoon, I left work early and drove to a coffee shop 3 blocks from our house. Patricia had told me the process server would deliver the papers to Margot at the salon at exactly 3 o'clock. My phone rang at 3:17. "It's done," Patricia said. "She's been served." I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel relieved. I just felt tired. "What happens now?" I asked. "She has 20 days to respond." "But Michael, I need to warn you. She's going to call you. Probably tonight. She's going to be angry, confused, maybe even apologetic. Do not engage. Refer her to me. Everything from this point forward goes through attorneys." Understood. I sat in that coffee shop for another hour, drinking terrible coffee and staring at my phone. When I finally drove home at 5, Margot's car was already in the driveway. I walked in and found her standing in the kitchen, the divorce papers spread across the counter. Her face was red, her eyes furious. "What the hell is this?" she demanded, holding up the documents. "Exactly what it looks like," I said calmly. "You're divorcing me? After 23 years, you're just going to throw away our marriage." "I'm not the one who threw it away, Margot. You did that when you started sleeping with Troy." She froze. "How did you?" "I know everything," I said. "Troy, the hidden income, Desert Bloom Properties, all of it." Her expression shifted from anger to something close to panic. "Michael, let me explain. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You've been stealing from me, lying to me, and planning to leave me with nothing while you run off to Arizona with your boyfriend. That's not true." I pulled out my phone and played the recording I'd made 3 weeks ago. Her voice, clear as day, talking to Troy about moving money and making plans. The color drained from her face. "You recorded me. I documented everything. The affair, the fraud, the property purchases. It's all in the filing." I gestured to the papers on the counter. "Read page 12. That's where we detail the $93,000 in unreported income." She grabbed the papers and flipped to page 12. I watched her eyes scan the text, growing wider with each line. "Page 19 is interesting too," I continued. "That's where we discuss the DNA test." Her head snapped up. "What DNA test?" "Aurora's not my daughter, Margot. You've been lying to me for 14 years. She staggered backward like I'd hit her. "Michael, I can explain that. It was a mistake, a one-time thing. I didn't know." "Stop," I said firmly. "I don't want to hear it. Everything you say is a lie. Everything you've ever said has been a lie." Tears started streaming down her face. "Please, Michael, we can fix this. I made mistakes, but we can work through them. Think about the kids." "I am thinking about the kids. That's why I'm doing this. They deserve better than growing up watching their mother manipulate and steal from their father. You can't take my children away from me." I'm not taking them away, but I'm going to make sure they know the truth about who you really are. She moved toward me, reaching out. Michael, please. I'm begging you. Don't do this. I stepped back. My attorney's contact information is in the papers. All communication goes through her now. I walked past her and headed upstairs. Behind me, I heard her collapse into sobs. Part of me, a small part, felt sorry for her. But the larger part, the part that had been betrayed and deceived for years, felt nothing but cold determination. This was just the beginning. 3 weeks before the court date, I was going through old files in my office when I found something that made my blood run cold. It was a manila envelope tucked behind some tax documents, dated from 18 months ago. Inside was a will, freshly printed, with signature lines highlighted in yellow. I read through it carefully. According to this document, I was leaving everything to Margot: the house, my retirement accounts, my life insurance policy, even my stake in a small investment property I'd inherited from my uncle. At the bottom, there was a sticky note in Margot's handwriting. Sign here and here. Estate planning stuff. Just a formality. I remember that day vaguely. She brought the papers to me while I was working on a project deadline, stressed and distracted. I picked up a pen, but then Jack had called from school saying he'd forgotten his gym clothes. I put the pen down, dealt with the emergency, and completely forgotten about the will. The signature lines were blank. I never signed it. I sat there staring at that document, realizing what had almost happened. If I'd signed it without reading, if I'd died in a car accident or had a heart attack, Margot would have inherited everything. And with me gone, there'd be no one to question the hidden income, the fraud, the affair. I took photos of every page and sent them to Patricia immediately. She called me within 5 minutes. Michael, this is attempted fraud. She created a will that essentially disinherits your children in favor of herself. Can we use this in court? Absolutely. It demonstrates premeditation and malice. She wasn't just planning to leave you. She was planning for scenarios where you might die first. That evening, I called Jack into my office. He'd been quiet lately, withdrawn. The stress of knowing about his mother's affair while pretending everything was normal had been weighing on him. I need to show you something, I said, handing him the unsigned will. He read through it, his expression growing darker with each page. She tried to get you to sign this. 18 months ago, I got distracted and never signed it. Jack's hands were shaking. Dad, what if you'd signed it? What if something happened to you? Nothing happened. I'm here. But she was planning for it. She was hoping. He couldn't finish the sentence. I put my hand on his shoulder. Jack, I need you to understand something. Your mother made choices that hurt all of us. But you're not responsible for her actions. Neither is Aurora. You're both my kids, and nothing changes that. Even though Aurora isn't, he stopped himself. Even though, I said firmly, biology doesn't define family. Love and commitment do. I chose to be her father 14 years ago, and I'm still choosing it now. Jack nodded, wiping his eyes. What happens at the court hearing? The truth comes out. All of it. Is Mom going to be okay? It was a kid's question, despite his 18 years. He was worried about his mother, even after everything she'd done. She's going to face consequences for her actions, I said carefully. But she's an adult, and she made adult choices. Whatever happens is on her, not on you or your sister. The next morning, I received a call from Richard Sterling. Michael, we need to prepare you for the hearing. Margot's attorney is going to try to paint you as a controlling husband who monitored her every move. They're going to claim the recordings were illegal, that you violated her privacy. Were the recordings illegal? No. You recorded conversations in your own home where you had a reasonable expectation that your spouse might be discussing marital assets. That's protected. But they'll try to make you look paranoid and obsessive. What's our strategy? We let the evidence speak for itself. The fraud, the affair, the attempted will manipulation, the DNA results. We don't need to attack her character. We just present facts and let the judge draw conclusions. On the Thursday before the Monday hearing, Margot tried one last time to reach me. She showed up at my office, which she'd never done in 23 years of marriage. Security called up. Mr. Hansen, there's a Margot Hansen here to see you. Should I send her up? No, I said. Tell her I'm not available. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text from her. Please, Michael. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. I didn't respond. Another text. I know I hurt you. I know I made mistakes. but we can still fix this before Monday. Please don't destroy our family in front of Judge. I forwarded the text to Patricia. Her response, don't engage. She's desperate and looking for any leverage. Stay strong. That night, I barely slept. Not from nervousness, but from anticipation. For months, I'd been preparing, collecting evidence, building the case. Now it was finally time. Monday morning, I'd walk into that courtroom and the truth would finally come out. All of it. The courthouse was intimidating, all marble and echoing hallways. I arrived at 8:30, 30 minutes before our hearing. Richard, Patricia, and Thomas were already there, setting up in one of the conference rooms. Remember, Patricia said as we review the documents one last time, stay calm. Don't let her attorney provoke you. Answer questions directly and honestly. At 9 o'clock, we walked into the courtroom. Margot was already seated at the petitioner's table with her attorney, Curtis Blake, a man in his 50s with slicked back hair and an expensive suit. She looked small, somehow diminished. Her usual confidence had evaporated. When our eyes met, she quickly looked away. The bailiff called us to order. All rise. The Honorable Judge Clarence Mitchell presiding. Judge Mitchell was a stern-looking man in his mid-60s. He took his seat and reviewed the case file for a moment before looking up. This is the matter of Hansen versus Hansen, petition for dissolution of marriage. I've reviewed the initial filings, and I must say, this is one of the most complex domestic cases I've seen in some time. He looked at Curtis. Counsel for the respondent, I see you filed a motion to dismiss based on alleged illegal recordings. Let's start there. Curtis stood. Your Honor, my client's privacy was violated by the petitioner, who secretly recorded private conversations without her knowledge or consent. We move to have all such recordings excluded from evidence. Judge Mitchell looked at Patricia. Counsel for the petitioner. Patricia stood smoothly. Your Honor, all recordings were made by Mr. Hansen in his own home, involving conversations about marital assets and finances. Under state law, he had every right to document discussions that directly impacted his financial interests. These weren't recordings of private, personal conversations. They were documentation of fraud. I'll allow the recordings, Judge Mitchell said. Motion denied. Let's move on to the preliminary matters. Curtis's face tightened, but he sat down. For the next hour, both attorneys presented opening arguments. Curtis painted Margot as a hardworking entrepreneur whose husband had become paranoid and controlling. Patricia methodically laid out the evidence: the hidden income, the property purchases, the affair, the DNA results. Judge Mitchell's expression grew darker as Patricia spoke. Then came the moment I've been waiting for. Curtis stood and said, Your Honor, I'd like to note for the record that Mr. Hansen is proceeding without proper legal representation. He's listed Sterling and Blackwell as counsel, but I've checked, and they have no current retainer agreement on file with this court. I saw Margot lean forward slightly, a hint of hope in her eyes. She thought I was alone. Judge Mitchell frowned. Is this true, Mr. Hansen? Are you representing yourself? I stood. No, Your Honor. Curtis smirked. Your Honor, there's no file notice of representation from. The courtroom doors opened. 3 figures walked in. Richard Sterling, followed by 2 senior partners I hadn't met before, Elizabeth Harrington and David Cross. All 3 wore immaculate suits and carried leather briefcases that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. They walked directly to our table without looking at anyone else. Richard addressed the judge. Your Honor, my apologies for the confusion. Sterling and Blackwell LLP officially represents Mr. Hansen as of this morning. We filed the notice of representation electronically at 7 a.m. It should be in your system now. The bailiff checked his computer and nodded to the judge. Judge Mitchell's eyebrows rose slightly. Sterling and Blackwell. I see. Well then, let's proceed. I watched the color drain from Margot's face. She leaned over to whisper urgently to Curtis, who looked equally stunned. Everyone in the legal community knew Sterling and Blackwell. They were the firm that had taken down 3 state senators in a corruption case. The firm that had won a landmark verdict against a pharmaceutical company. The firm that didn't lose. And they were representing me. Curtis cleared his throat. Your Honor, may I request a brief recess to confer with my client? Denied. Judge Mitchell said. You've had weeks to prepare. Let's continue. For the next 2 hours, Patricia and Elizabeth systematically dismantled every argument Curtis tried to make. They presented Gerald's testimony about the tax fraud. They showed the emails about Desert Bloom Properties. They played the recording of Margot discussing her plans with Troy. And then Elizabeth stood and said, "Your Honor, we have one more piece of evidence that we believe is crucial to this case." She held up the unsigned will. 18 months ago, the respondent presented this document to Mr. Hansen and asked him to sign it. He was distracted and forgot to complete the signature. This will would have left everything to Mrs. Hansen, effectively disinheriting their 2 children. Judge Mitchell took the document and read it carefully. His jaw tightened. "Mrs. Hansen," he said, looking directly at Margot, "did you create this will?" Margot stood shakily. "Your Honor, it was just estate planning. I didn't mean—" "Did you or did you not create a will that would have left your husband's entire estate to you, excluding both children?" "Yes, but—" "Sit down." She did, and I saw tears starting to stream down her face. Judge Mitchell set the will aside. "I'll hear closing arguments, but I'll tell you now, I've made my decision on the preliminary motions. All marital assets will remain frozen pending final judgment. We'll reconvene in 2 weeks for the final hearing." As we left the courtroom, Margot tried to approach me. Curtis held her back, shaking his head. Richard put his hand on my shoulder. "That went better than expected. What happens now?" "Now we prepare for the final round. And Michael, after today, I don't think she'll have the stomach to fight much longer." I looked back at the courtroom. Through the window, I could see Margot sitting alone at the table, her head in her hands. Part of me felt something close to pity. But mostly, I just felt ready for this to be over. 2 weeks later, we returned to the courtroom for the final hearing. The gallery was fuller this time. Jack sat in the front row behind me, a silent show of support. Aurora was with my sister, spared from witnessing what was about to happen. Margot looked diminished. Her expensive clothes couldn't hide the weight she'd lost or the dark circles under her eyes. Curtis sat beside her, looking resigned. They both knew how this was going to end. Judge Mitchell took the bench and didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I've reviewed all evidence, testimony, and documentation submitted by both parties," he began. "This is one of the clearest cases of marital fraud I've encountered in 30 years on the bench." He looked directly at Margot. "Mrs. Hansen, you systematically deceived your husband for years. You hid income, purchased property with a paramour using marital funds, attempted to manipulate estate documents, and maintained a relationship with another man while pretending to be a faithful spouse. More egregiously, you allowed your husband to raise a child as his own for 14 years while knowing he was not the biological father." Margot's shoulders shook, but Judge Mitchell continued. "However, Mr. Hansen has made it clear that despite the DNA results, he wishes to maintain his parental relationship with Aurora. That speaks to his character and his commitment to the children, regardless of biology." He picked up a document. "Here is my ruling. The marriage is dissolved. As for asset division, I'm awarding 75% of all marital assets to Mr. Hansen. This includes the family home, retirement accounts, and investment properties. Mrs. Hansen will receive 25%, which is more than generous given her conduct." Curtis started to stand, but Judge Mitchell held up a hand. "I'm not finished. Desert Bloom Properties in Arizona will be sold immediately, with Mr. Hansen receiving his full marital portion plus damages. Mrs. Hansen, you will repay the $93,000 in hidden income within 18 months or face potential criminal charges for tax fraud." Margot was crying openly now. "Regarding the children, Mr. Hansen is granted primary physical custody of both Jack and Aurora. Mrs. Hansen will have supervised visitation for the first 6 months, after which we'll reassess based on her compliance with this order and her behavior." "Your Honor," Curtis said weakly, "supervised visitation seems—" "Counselor, your client tried to manipulate her husband into signing a will that would have disinherited his children. She has demonstrated a pattern of deception and manipulation. I will not risk the children's well-being on the assumption she's changed. Supervised visitation is my final ruling." Judge Mitchell looked at me. "Mr. Hansen, do you have anything you'd like to say?" I stood slowly. For weeks, I'd imagined this moment. I'd rehearsed speeches about betrayal and justice. But standing there, looking at the broken woman who'd once been my wife, I found I had nothing left to say to her. "No, Your Honor," I said. "I'm ready to move forward." Then this court is adjourned. The gavel came down with a sharp finality. Curtis immediately began whispering to Margot about appeals, but I could see in her face that she was done fighting. She'd lost everything that mattered, and she knew it. As I gathered my things, Jack approached me. "Dad, is it really over?" "It's really over." He hugged me, something he hadn't done in years. "I'm proud of you. For fighting back. For not just taking it." Richard shook my hand. "Congratulations, Michael. This was a complete victory." "It doesn't feel like victory," I said quietly. "It just feels like the end of something that should have ended years ago." "That's wisdom talking," Richard replied. "You'll heal. You'll move forward. And you'll be better for it." Outside the courthouse, I stood in the afternoon sun and breathed deeply. Somewhere inside, Margot was facing the reality of her choices. Troy was probably being notified that his investment property would be liquidated. Gerald was likely breathing a sigh of relief that his cooperation had saved his license. And me? I was free. Free from the lies, the deception, the constant wondering if I was crazy for suspecting what I'd suspected. Jack stood beside me. "What now?" "Now we go home. We tell Aurora that everything's going to be okay. And we start rebuilding. Just the three of us. Just the three of us." We walked to the car together, father and son, ready to face whatever came next. Behind us, the courthouse doors closed with a heavy thud. That chapter was finished. 8 months later, I stood in the kitchen of the house that was now legally mine, making breakfast for Aurora. She sat at the counter doing homework, her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. "Dad, can you help me with this math problem?" she asked. "Show me what you've got." We worked through it together. She was thriving now, grades improving, smile coming more easily. The supervised visits with Margot had been difficult at first, but they'd settled into a routine. Margot was trying, I'd give her that. She'd gotten a regular job, started therapy, and followed every court order to the letter. Jack had left for college in August, choosing a school 3 hours away. We talked every week, and he came home for weekends sometimes. He was studying business, talking about becoming a financial analyst. I suspected my ordeal had influenced that choice, but I didn't push him to discuss it. The doorbell rang. I opened it to find Patricia Gaines standing there with a folder. "Michael, I wanted to deliver this in person," she said, stepping inside. I opened the folder. It was a check for $67,000. Desert Bloom Properties sold last month, Patricia explained. "After legal fees and splitting with Troy's portion, this is your share plus the damages the court awarded." I stared at the check. It was more money than I'd expected, but it felt hollow somehow. "There's more," Patricia continued. "The IRS investigation into Margot's hidden income resulted in fines and penalties. She's on a payment plan, but it's going to take her years to dig out from under this." "I'm not celebrating her suffering," I said. "I know you're not. But you should know that your case has set a precedent in the state. 3 other men have come forward with similar situations, wives hiding income and assets. Your willingness to fight back opened doors for them." After Patricia left, I sat down at the kitchen table with Aurora. "Who was that?" she asked. "Just the attorney. Finishing up some paperwork from the divorce." Aurora was quiet for a moment. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Always." "Do you hate Mom?" I chose my words carefully. "No, sweetheart. I don't hate her. I'm angry about what she did, and I'm disappointed. But hate takes too much energy, and I'd rather spend that energy on you and Jack." "She cries a lot during our visits," Aurora said softly. "She keeps saying she's sorry. I'm sure she is. And maybe someday, she'll be able to rebuild her life. But that's not my responsibility anymore. My responsibility is making sure you're happy and safe." "I am," Aurora said. "I know things are different now, but I feel safer. Like I don't have to pretend everything's okay when it's not." That hit me harder than I expected. My daughter had been carrying that burden, pretending her family was fine when she could sense it falling apart. "You never have to pretend with me," I said. "Not about anything." She hugged me tight. "I love you, Dad. I love you too, kiddo." That evening, after Aurora went to bed, I sat on the back deck with a beer, looking at the stars. The house was quiet. The same house where I'd overheard that phone call months ago, where everything had started to unravel. But it felt different now. Lighter somehow, like cleaning out a cluttered room and finally being able to breathe. My phone buzzed. A text from Jack. "Just aced my finance exam. Thanks for teaching me to pay attention to the details, Dad." I smiled and texted back. Proud of you, son. The check from Patricia sat on the counter inside. Tomorrow I'd deposit it into the college fund for the kids. Money that had been stolen would now pay for their education. There was poetry in that somewhere. I thought about the man I'd been a year ago. Quiet, methodical, overlooked. Margot had mistaken patience for weakness, silence for ignorance. She'd underestimated me in every way that mattered. The house was mine. The kids were safe. The truth had come out. I finished my beer and went inside, locking the door behind me. Tomorrow I'd wake up and make breakfast, and help with homework, and live the life I'd rebuilt from the ruins of betrayal. And I'd do it knowing that I'd fought for what mattered, that I'd stood up when it would have been easier to fold, that I'd protected my children even when the fight got ugly. That was worth more than any settlement check. That was everything I needed.